Our next speaker is Captain Tom Herzig from the Naval Submarine Medical Research Laboratory. He'll be talking on, remind me again, discovering the leader within you, where you've been.
So I think what you're going to notice with the talks, and although we had a group discussion on the telephone to plan all this, we didn't really share our slides, and seeing the slides, you're going to see a lot of overlap. But that also gets to the importance of what we're trying to drive home as some of the key points that are for you to gain from this discussion. I'll just leave this up for a moment so you can see a little bit about me. Clearly, I'm in the Navy. I'm active duty with the Navy. I'm a Medical Service Corps officer. And I've done a lot of different things. So everything from actually being in the lab doing research to working at our headquarters in the medical field for the Navy, what we call a staff officer. It's more policy work. And now I'm actually the executive officer for one of our medical research laboratories. But what I would like to do is talk about some things that you may not realize are in your CV, while at the same time we as leaders looking to hire, how we see those key aspects. And I realized this morning when I was sitting in my room going over the slides, I didn't include something that I probably should have, because the main point of my talk is what's not in your CV or what may be in your CV that you don't realize are attributes for leadership. So I'll leave this up for a second because it's going to tie into all of this. But think about your CV for a brief moment. What are the key components that you put in your CV? Usually you have your education, you have your experience, you might list some of the committees that you've served on, clearly your publications, and then honors and awards. And of course there's, everyone's CV is a little different. You might add other things, but those are probably some of the key aspects of what's in your CV. So let's look at your education. What does that say about you? Well, that's really your foundation. That's the basis for the position that you're seeking. When it comes to your experience, those are the positions that you've held that then give the credence to the position that you're trying to gain, whether it's in academia or industry or within the government. It also, the longer you're around and the more positions you have, what we're looking for is there growth, is there responsibilities that you're taking on over time? Have you gone from assistant professor to associate professor? Have you gone from being a member of a team to now you're the leader of the team? That's showing responsibility. It's showing some authority, some ability to take on some of those leadership capabilities. So what about committees? I mentioned that on your CV. Well, as David mentioned, networking is key. What does committee work do? Whether it's within your institution or external to your institution. I mean, it could be a community service activity that you're involved in. It shows networking. It shows your ability to go out, exchange ideas, contribute, and that's important in a leadership role. Your publications. Your publications is your productivity, especially in the sciences. This is what I've done. It's what you can defend because you're published. It's a little less important once you get more into the management areas and the leadership areas. but it's going to be job dependent. In industry, it's still important. In other areas of leadership, maybe not so much, but it still shows that you've been productive in your scientific career. And then what about the honors and awards? Of course, we all like getting those, that's important, but it also shows excellence, whether it's an award for the work that you've accomplished, maybe a special achievement. It shows excellence in what you've sought out to do. It's also recognition from peers that you're excelling in whatever the field is, whatever the area is for that award. So that's important to make sure you highlight those things when you're on an interview, because that also shows your ability to present your ideas, defend them. So let's now look at this slide. So what I've listed on the left is a bunch of different things that you may be involved with, but probably not all of these. And for any particular given job, some of these skills or areas of expertise may or may not be important for the jobs that are listed on the right. So if you want to be, a PI, a principal investigator, there's several items on the left that are going to be important to fulfill that role. But that may be very different than if you're looking to be a leader or a manager, whether it's government or industry or some other area. If you want to be working in policy, what are the key aspects to serving in those roles? And understanding the organizations in which either you're working in or where you're targeting, say you have to write a grant for funding support. Understanding how they operate will influence what it is that you do and how you write your proposal, because you understand their structure. So this last point about tactical, operational, and strategic levels of an organization. Tactical meaning the team you're working on versus a department versus the whole organization. That's the various tiers here. That's going to be important for certain types of jobs. So taking some of the items that are on the left, especially for the graduate students, take those opportunities when you can, teach in a lab, and whether it's in the graduate school or in the medical school, where you can show that you have expertise in that particular area. That's important later. Leading seminars, giving seminars, as David was saying, that's key to showing that you have the skills, you have the capabilities, and more than likely, you've done the work, because you're not going to be presenting if you haven't done something. We don't all get to travel here just because we want to go to San Diego in April, and some of us left snowstorms on the East Coast, although it's nice. So you have to be productive. We don't, there's not an endless supply of travel money, so you have to produce. That's how you get to go to the meetings. That's how you get out and share what you've done and what you've accomplished. But if you want to get into management or into leadership, think about what you need from a skill set to be effective in those roles. Maybe you need a business course. Maybe you need to understand finances. How many of you have developed a budget for your project? Just a show of hands. Good number, and that's good. Many of us have to make purchasing of supplies and equipment, or in some cases animals or other things to run our experiments. So having that understanding of acquisition is important, especially if you want to move more into the senior leader and management levels. So if your focus is, I want to do research, I want to be at say a large medical school and continue working in a R&D environment with a little bit of teaching, you're essentially, as David said, you're your own boss, but you're also, in some ways, a small entrepreneur. You have to develop your team. You have to have the skills not only to manage your lab, but build your lab, get the technical support, train the technical support. So those kind of skills are important for understanding where you want to go, what you want to do. How can you be effective at that next job? If you're looking to do more of the policy work, that's probably going to be something outside of academia, although you could still be in a position in academia to do that. But that's where some of the various nonprofits, perhaps even the various societies have positions where you can be working in the field of policy. So those are some key aspects, but a lot of it does come down to communication and the ability to write. If you can't get across your ideas, the importance of your ideas, or the reason why someone should invest dollars into you or your project, you're not going to be successful. So I've kept the skills list on the left the same. But now let's look at the different types of jobs from a different perspective, not categorized by academia versus industry, but let's look at, are you leading yourself or are you leading a large group? So essentially, for lack of a better term, the pick list on the left is going to influence greatly, what you do from the list on the right. And the same with the previous slide. If I go back here, you can pick several of those items on the left, and it's going to influence these various jobs. And of course, the more you pick from the left, the more that's going to be available on the right. But we can't be experts in everything, so you have to kind of hone your skills into a couple of key areas so that you can be extremely proficient in what you want to do, but have knowledge and understand those other areas, so when you're in general business meetings, you understand what that other group is working on or the financial impact that may have. So if we go back to this list, what skills do you have and what jobs are they going to lead you to? Can you manage the resources? That comes down to a lot of budgeting and finance. And from resources, this can be anything from the people that are in your lab, whether it's technicians, graduate students, postdocs, other faculty members. If it's in industry, the titles are different, but it's a similar structure. To managing the budget for your project, to making sure, I think industry has something similar, in the government we do. It's called spend plans. Are you on track? If we give you $300,000 and we expect you to spend that over the course of this year, are you spending according to that phase plan that you delivered at the beginning? That will be important, because if you're ahead of that schedule, they're going to look at you as, whoa, did you under budget? And now you're going to come back to me and ask for another $300K because you blew through it. Or on the alternative, we're into the 9th month and you're still at $250K sitting in your bank. Well, how are you going to spend this in 3 months? So that knife cuts both directions. So you have to be good at your finances and managing that appropriately. Time management, working within your team, working with senior leaders, being able to do all the different things that you need to do, that can be key. Some people are very, very good at multitasking. Like David, I tend, especially the larger my group, the more I tend to manage by walking around. It's how I stay engaged in what everyone's doing, as well as being able to have that personal interaction. Hey, what's up with your son? Hey, congratulations on your pregnancy. Whatever the case is, you become a person as much as the leader. Scope control. Scope control is making sure you're sticking to your game plan. You know, if your project says, I'm going to carry out, XYZ experiment, and it's going to take the next 4 months, and I need, 24 rats, or I need 10 human subjects, or whatever the case is, have you stuck to that? Or has your project suddenly taken a tangent and now you're nowhere close to what the original scope of the work was? I mean, that can be good, especially if you're finding some new ideas and new answers to things. But if it was chasing a rabbit down a hole, that can come back to be a problem later. Marketing and sales. I mean, most of us in science don't think about marketing and sales, and even in industry. You're not really selling until the product's actually out there, FDA approved, ready to go, but that's not your job. That's the sales force job. But what I'm talking about, and it's similar to what David was saying, is he used the word championing. Being a champion for your work. You have to go out and, whether it's the sponsors, in my case, the Office of Naval Research, or the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, which funds our work, or in your case, if you're going to NIH, or if you're in industry and you have to go to senior management to say, I have this great idea, fund me, their first question is, why? So you have to develop that sales pitch, that marketing. Why should you be invested in? And when you can talk about not only what can be delivered and how it will impact not only you or the company or greater society, that's where you get the bang for the buck. And teamwork is kind of used loosely in many cases, but it's very important in getting the work done. Now, I see my time's running out, so I wanted to get to this last slide because it's an important transition between what you have and where you want to go. So I listed on the left essentially a typical research program. You have to come up with the idea, you have to plan it, you execute it, you have to monitor it and control it along the way to make sure things are going the way you want it, and then you close it out, i.e., in many cases, it's right in the manuscript, right in the report. And then that leads to, on the right, the types of jobs, keys to success in a job, skills held, your education, the targets and to achieve those goals and success. Those can all be tied back to these different items here on the left. What part did you play in each of those? Now I put down at the bottom project management because that's a very common term in business. Project management is a big deal. There are degrees. I have a master's in project management. You can get certification in project management, but you can't. And what we do in science involves project management from beginning to end. But if you don't realize this is what we look at from senior leaders as to where are you in this scheme? Are you at the beginning? Are you in the middle of a study? Or have you completed the work, but it's not really done until it's closed out? For those that can't see, David shaking his head. And in government, it's not done until it's published. And it's tough for a lot of the scientists, but when you're dealing with tax dollars and we have to be able to go back and explain what did we do with the money, if we can't show a report at the end or a publication or a manuscript, that's when we get slapped on the wrist. What have you done? So project management is key, but I want you to be aware that it's out there. It's also something that you may need additional skills to be proficient, because most of us in the science, we go through, we take biology, chemistry, you name it, and we're really good at what we do. But to be able to talk to the attorneys in your company or the business managers in your company, they're not going to understand the science. But you can understand finances. You can understand what it takes to market. Essentially, you can play in their sandbox, but it's very difficult for them to play in your sandbox. Leverage that. Use that to your advantage, and you'll be successful. I think I'm nearly out of my time, so I'll save anything else for the discussion, but thank you. Appreciate it.